From KUNC and the NPR network, this is In The NoCo. I'm Erin O'Toole. With the holiday season here, we're right in the middle of a very busy time at Denver International Airport. But the airport isn't just busy, it's noisy. And that can be tougher for travelers than you might realize. Research suggests that exposure to noise can trigger stress in a traveler's brain and body, which doesn't help if you're already tense trying to just get through those crowded security lines. Which is why earlier this year, Denver airport officials launched a campaign to turn down the noise. The goal is to create a calmer and more peaceful airport experience. Now, if that sounds impossible, my guest today says even a modest reduction in the amount of noise can have a big impact on a traveler's sense of well-being. Jamie Banks is a health and environmental scientist and the founder of Quiet Communities, an organization that works to reduce noise pollution from restaurant interiors to noisy neighborhoods. She joined me to talk about how a quieter airport might help tame some of the anxiety of travel.
When people think of noise, they think naturally of their ears. What people don't tend to think of is the effects that noise can have on the stress reaction in the body. Short term, you can have responses like annoyance, emotional responses, sometimes even going to anger if it's something very unpleasant. Your blood pressure can go up.
Now, DIA has gotten a lot busier over the years, and it is now the fourth busiest airport in the U.S. You travel pretty often. Tell me some things that you see or hear travelers do at airports that gives away the fact that a busy, noisy airport is taking a toll on them.
Well, you see all kinds of people at airports. You see parents traveling with young children, trying to keep them entertained, trying to keep them from screaming. The noise can just exacerbate that kind of discomfort, both for them as well as for fellow travelers. Other types of people that you see are business travelers who may be sitting in the gates trying to have maybe a business call on their cell phone, and that constant interruption of announcements can really break up and hinder them. And then you really can see in airports people trying to get away from the noise by sitting in a quiet corner, away from the gates, or in hallway areas leading to the gates where there might be some chairs, things like that.
Yeah. I think I saw one person with a coat kind of pulled over their head. They were trying to talk on their phone. It was, like I've been there.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about what Denver International Airport is aiming to do with their campaign for a quieter airport. DIA officials started with the microphones that airlines use to call up people to board the plane. You can usually hear those blasting out at multiple gates, not just the one that's boarding. So airport officials are modifying the mics so the announcements are only audible near that specific gate. What do you think makes this a good place to start the Quiet campaign?
I think there's probably some low-hanging fruit here in terms of what airports can do, and that sounds like it might be one that would work. Of course, you have situations where planes are delayed, people go to other areas of the airport, and so they need, if they're not hearing those announcements, you need alternative ways to grab their attention as to what's happening with their flights. And maybe there are some alternative ways, maybe having more screens, departure and arrival information, or something that indicates, if a plane is late, what is happening at their gate. So there might be some alternatives.
Well, DIA officials have also talked about adjusting the acoustics of the airport to make it less noisy. How feasible is that if the buildings are already designed and built?
I'm not an expert in that area. I know that there's things that can be put in structurally, panels that might be put in, just turning down the decibel level of the announcements, and perhaps there's other auditory modifications that can be made.
Okay. I'm picturing maybe some panels on ceilings or on the walls that would kind of muffle the sound a little bit.
Yeah, things like carpets, acoustic panels, different materials that are more absorbent and don't allow the sound to bounce around. You see this same problem in restaurants, where it might have a very hip or chic look, but the acoustics are just awful. Concrete walls, loft spaces, open
Yeah.
beams and things like that, where it's not great at absorbing the
Yeah.
noise and chatter that you might hear in restaurants.
Right. You're right. It looks wonderful. Not so great for having a conversation.
Yeah.
If you were a consultant on this project at Denver International Airport, what would you recommend that's maybe not as obvious as turning down the PA announcements, but something that might add to the tranquility?
I think one thing, and you see it in different airports, at least different airports that I've been in, is the creation of quiet spaces.
Mm.
Play areas for children that are removed away from the gate, and even quieter areas where people can set up and work or have conversations. I think those kinds of things are really important for different kinds of travelers. There are people who are highly sensitive to noise,
Mm.
more so than the general population. This can be seniors, people with hearing disorders, people with neurosensory, neurodivergence, autism being included in that are very sensitive to sound.
Right.
And so having areas, for them particularly is very, very helpful.
Help us imagine what a successful version of this work sounds like. How will the experience of traveling through Denver's airport be different a year from now if their noise reduction campaign succeeds?
Well, I think coming into the airport, especially if you're hurried, you're stressed, you want to get to the gate. A lot of our airports now are expanded. So you're not just walking down, 100 feet, you might be walking a quarter of a mile.
Right.
I think that having places along those routes for people to stop, sit near windows, have quiet, know that they have access to quiet spaces if they're early enough to sit down and work, bring their children into a space where they can play and not be bothering other people. All of those things would be very helpful. I think also that when you go to many airports today, you're not just hearing announcements, you're hearing music. So there's very little time to get away from sound. Maybe not having music either all the time or having music that is more calming. Music is a subjective thing.
Sure.
Some people like heavy metal, some people like soft jazz.
True.
But, I think that there's probably music that tends to be generally calming for most of the population if, they insist on having music. But having quiet is good too.
Jamie Banks is a health and environmental scientist and the founder of Quiet Communities. Thank you so much for talking with me about this.
Thank you for having me, Erin. It's my pleasure. And happy holidays.
Happy holidays to you. Quiet travels.
Thank you.
We'll have links where you can learn more about Denver's quiet airport policy in our show notes and at KUNC.org. That's it today for In The NoCo. I'm Erin O'Toole, wishing all of you happy holidays. We'll be back on Friday. Thanks so much for listening.